What is up, everyone, and welcome to DOOP on the Volley, Philly Sports Network's Philadelphia Union dedicated podcast here. I'm Tim Lovinguth, and I'm here with our other PSN Union crew. We got Paul over there. How's it going, Paul?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Hey, we get to talk about a Union win for the first time this season. I know it's got us really hyped. Jimmy, how are you feeling tonight, man?
Feeling good. I had a long week. Especially with the late game on Tuesday night, and I have to get up early for work every day now. So I've been trying to catch up on sleep since. But like you said, it's great to talk Union soccer. So I'm happy to be here.
It is. It's great to talk Union soccer. We're going to talk about CCC, obviously, but Eric, MLS is back, and we get to talk some crazy predictions, and we get to talk about the first Union MLS game of the year against Chicago Fire. But first off, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. Just even hearing the words out loud just gets you going, gets you ready. Like, I can't wait for Saturday. It's gonna Tuesday was great, but home game opening up the season, that's where it's at.
Yeah, man. Uttering the words MLS is back gives me cringe from 2020, but hey, MLS is back. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about CONCACAF Champions Cup, or as the nice hashtag on Twitter has been saying, Conca Champions, which I actually really like. It's kind of it has the ring of a CCL, where CCC just sounds like we're saying XXX or something like that. So it's a weird little vibe there, but we got to get right into it. So the Union played in their first leg against Deportivo Saprissa on Tuesday night, and we all saw it, and we all have sort of started talking about it. They did not look good at all in that first half. We had a 50-yard own goal, which is football heritage, as many have pointed out on Twitter. It's that's so Union times 10. Jakob Glesnes' second own goal to start a season in a row, which is just a crazy stat. And then in the second half, I don't know what Jim Curtin said to them in the locker room. I guess it's that new suit swag that he's got going on. But Julian Carranza came out, hat trick in the second half, and the Union somehow pulled out a 3-2 victory. So let's get into that first leg, and I want to get everyone's perspective on how they felt it went. So let's throw it over to Jimmy first. Jimmy, that first leg was crazy. What are your feelings on it, man?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to be a super big soccer fan to understand that Union did not look good in the first half. But going into halftime, I was super hopeful that it was a matter of teams being in different points in their season, right? Union, obviously, it being their first competitive game in 3 months, around 3 months. And Saprissa, midway through their season almost, and doing pretty well in their season. That being said, there was nothing exciting about Union soccer in that first half, but the goal was to not let Saprissa score, which they did. They did not let Saprissa score. But in all seriousness, though, I think they weathered the storm after that. Saprissa should have been up a few goals, and the environment was really tough. So to keep it 1-0 going into halftime was really important. And we obviously know what happened after that, so that was huge.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you said, a crazy start to the season, crazy weather, really bad first half, and then the second half, the Union kind of put it together, and you got to see those sequences of the passing, especially with certain players. Like we saw Quinn Sullivan get really active, we saw Jack McGlynn get active. I want to throw this over to Eric. What are your thoughts about that chemistry that we saw from that first 11? What are your thoughts on that first starting 11 from the year?
Yeah, I think it was mostly what we expected. There were a couple question marks heading into it. Jimmy correctly called Damian Lowe starting, and even though it was because of a Jack Elliott injury, it was still a good call. I think there were some question marks around that right side of midfield, and whether it would be Quinn Sullivan starting, just given his age and given the hostile environment away. But like you said, it's particularly in the second half, he really picked it up, and McGlynn too, as young guys playing in a hostile environment like that. I mean, they've got the experience with the youth national team, so it's not as much of a surprise to see them perform like that. But it's still, you never know with young players. There's that consistency issue generally at that age. So seeing them perform like that and being able to overcome that tough start to take it to that next level is really encouraging to see from the whole team, but particularly from the younger guys. Also, one thing to note, not only did Glesnes score an own goal as the first goal of the season, I think it was the same minute.
It was.
Yeah. Which is wild. But, that kind of thing only ever happens in MLS. You never see own goals and say the Champions League final. But yeah, it's an I think encouraging is the word. If I had to narrow it down to one word, encouraging would be where I'd go with it. Seeing that kind of fight back, plus, getting a sloppy defensive performance out of the way early. I think I'd rather have that, especially in a 2-leg tie. I'd rather have that now than in a game later in the season.
100%. And it's like, they were able to come back, get those 3 goals, get those 3 dupes, like your shirt says there. It's a nice one. We got some love for your shirt here from Jose. He says he got the same one on. So hey, there you go. Hey, put a nice dupe shirt there, everybody. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Well, Paul, I want to get your thoughts as well on this match against Saprissa. Why do you think that Philly kind of came out and struggled so much early on? Like, I know it's the first game of the year, but they didn't look like themselves at all. The defense was not really compact. Everyone looked very disjointed. What are your thoughts on it?
I guess I hate first game of the season, first half of the season, first competitive match. I really hate to use that excuse.
Yeah.
And then plus in the really tough environment of the Saprissa home supporters, you heard them chanting loud through TV. Yeah. It's a really tough environment. I know. I saw a stat, I forget what it was, but Saprissa really doesn't lose at home. And they're basically like the Subaru Park of the Costa Rican League. They just don't lose at home. But like I said, tough, especially with Saprissa being in the middle of the season, and it's your first competitive game. So these Saprissa boys have played competitive matches before against teams, so they really have the basis down. Plus, I hate using excuses, but that weather really wasn't good soccer weather at all. I think that had to do something with the own goal, the wind. I don't really want to talk about that. Thinking about it makes me mad, but the weather and the wind and all really wasn't the best conditions. But like Eric said, coming into the second half and seeing the team just swap right back into shape is very encouraging. I think it had something to do with them Curtin saying, maybe the Union were very lucky to not be behind multiple goals at half. It's like, you guys can still win this game. You guys can still play like the team I know you can. And they did that in the second half, and they ended up going home with a 3-2 win.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was a roller coaster of a match. I know we all talked about how we stayed up late. All of us, or most of us at least, had early work in the morning. Like, I don't know, man. You can't talk about that match, though, without mentioning King Julian Carranza. So I kind of want to get your guys' take on Carranza's performance here. So I'll throw it over to Eric first. Obviously, we know he scored all 3 goals, but how do you feel that like his movement was in the game? I know you were watching it and seeing how he was doing there. So how do you feel he did kind of getting into those spaces?
Yeah, that's what really stuck out to me was less. I mean, the finishes were great, but the positions he was getting into, and not just him, but the whole buildup, particularly for the second and third goal, You could really see the chemistry that these players have built up over the past few years. They know where each other is going to be, and I think the past couple seasons it's taken longer than just one half for them to get to that point, to kind of reconnect and get up to that level where they're putting 7 goals past DC United multiple times. But Carranza in particular was just, to steal a cliche, like, it's the kind of performance that you would encourage young players to watch in terms of movement and in terms of positional awareness and knowing not just where the space is, but where the ball is going to end up, which is something that you'll hear talk, like Thomas Müller is a good example of someone who often gets talked about, of having that sixth sense of like being in the right place in the right time, not just to receive the pass, but even if there's like a weird rebound or something, certain players can end up exactly where that ball is going to go, even if it's in an unexpected place. And he kind of had that vibe going on in the second half on Tuesday.
Yeah. No, I mean, 100%. We all know, like, he scored the hat trick. He was the star player of the game. But I don't know. I feel like there were other players too that kind of deserve their flowers. So I'm gonna kind of throw it over to Jimmy. Jimmy, who's one player that who maybe isn't getting a lot of praise that should be from that match against Saprissa?
Man, I'm upset that you asked me one player, because I think there's two that are pretty deserving. A lot of people have talked about Quinn Sullivan in this game. A lot of people. That's a great comment.
Real quick for our listeners later on in the podcast, we have Jose in here saying, "Oh, here we go. Leave it to Eric to force a Bayern comparison into this." So that's what he just did, comparing Carranza to Mueller. So that's a great one, right there.
Listen, I stick to my brand. Okay,
hey, you have to do it. You have to do it.
We need you for that, honestly.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, I think a lot of people have talked about Quinn Sullivan. He looked, I don't think he looked so good in the right side of the diamond to start the game. But no one in the Union squad really did look good in the first half. Once he moved up towards the top, once Uwa came off, he looked a lot better. I thought he looked much more attacking, and I thought he looked good. But one person that I do want to talk about, I don't think is getting as much praise as even Quinn is Gazdag. I think had a pretty decent game. This is an interesting stat that I've talked to my buddy Todd from the Free Kick podcast before. The last 2 seasons, Union have had, I think last year they were the second lowest, and the year before I think they were the lowest. Second lowest carries into the box in the league. And that's kind of down to the way that Union play. But if you think about 2 of those 3 goals, it was, getting into deep spaces. The third one, Quinn running onto the ball, cutting it back to Gazdag into the box, and then him one-touching it into Carranza. And the one before, Quinn carrying into the box, playing a deep ball into the, towards the 6-yard box to Gazdag, and him squaring it to Carranza. And so I think last year, Gazdag had struggled to get into those positions where he can feed the ball to Uwa, to Carranza, to put those goals away. And so I liked seeing him in those positions where he isn't having to beat a guy and then make those passes. Somebody's feeding him the ball where he's drawing attention and can make those easy pass to a wide open guy to finish it off. So I really liked seeing Gazdag involved. And we know how good he is on PKs, and he kind of lacked outside of that last year. So it was a good sign for me. I hope that is a sign of things to come from him.
Yeah, for sure. We got Jose jumping in here again, though, talking about the brand. So Jimmy's brand here is being a sad Spurs fan. True. I mean,
it's so to speak on that, it's crazy that I feel like being a Philadelphia fan and a Spurs fan is so similar, and I got to choose being a Spurs fan. I didn't even get born into that, so that says a lot about my personality. Honestly, is that I'm just ready for disappointment and anguish at all times.
I mean, honestly, a decade ago, friends of mine got me into Liverpool, and they were using the same kind of excuses, and then they went on a very different path. But we don't have to talk about that right now. Let's get it back to Union versus Saprissa. But we can talk a little bit about some of the stuff that maybe made us a little bit sad on that night. We talked about good performances from Carranza and Sullivan and even Gazdag here. But Paul, we haven't got a chance to talk about some people who didn't really have great performances that I know a lot of us are going to think about. Jakob Glesnes there. So I want to get your take on how his game was, and how did you feel during that crazy own goal sequence? I know you said you had feelings about it, so I want to get them here on the podcast.
Yeah. So I'll go into talking about the own goal real quick.
Okay.
Before start off, hit the storm right away. Yeah. So I was watching on a little bit of a delayed stream.
Okay.
And my other friend was watching the game, and I'm sitting there just, it's 0-0. The Union are, it wasn't going well, but it was 0-0. I was happy with that, not allowing Saprissa to score. And then all I hear is my friend in the group call go, "Oh no, oh no, oh no," and I'm sitting here thinking, what could possibly have gone that wrong that he's saying, "Oh no," 4 times? And then I see Glesnes pass the ball back, and I was like, in my head, I was like, "Oh no, this can't be it. Like, it's not happening." And then I see Blake jump up, misses the ball completely. I sit there and I go, is this really how the Union season is starting? Is this really the omen to the start of the season that I'm going to witness? And to say the least, I was very mad about the situation. I won't lie. I may have shut my laptop and decided that I needed to go to bed after that because I couldn't take it anymore. But
nothing like a first game to not take it anymore, right?
It was brutal. I could ramble all night about how bad this was, but I don't really want to do that because just keep constantly thinking about it makes me mad. I'm just happy that the Union ended up winning, and that own goal really won't have that much of an importance in the result of the tie.
Yeah, and when we're looking at it, we're talking about what is, could be a defender of the year candidate and a goalkeeper of the year candidate having a howler on the first game of the season. Like you said, those emotions are running high in that first game, and you're like, how could this possibly be happening? Are you joking? But in the grand scheme of things, these are 2 players who are probably 2 of the best in their positions in MLS. So I think everyone just got to take a big deep breath. We'll see how it goes here later in the season. But before we kind of tie a bow on this first leg of Saprissa, we know the result. It was a 3-2 win. Obviously, you're taking those away goals back to Philly here, back to Subaru Park for the second leg. And we haven't really talked about that here yet, but the away goals tiebreaker. So I just want to get Eric, your thoughts on getting 3 away goals at Saprissa in that atmosphere before we kind of move on to MLS stuff. How are you feeling about that? I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's huge. And like we were saying a bit earlier, it's hard to beat them at home in general, particularly given their earlier start to the season. So they're actually in seasonal shape. So that everything was kind of stacked against us. Yeah. So to get 3 goals like that is impressive and vital, particularly given the fact that they scored a second one towards the end there. I think having that advantage. Yeah, I mean, as nice as it would have been to go in with a 3-1 advantage, even the 3-2, with it being 3 away goals, it's the kind of thing that takes a little bit of the pressure off in the second leg, and hopefully calm some of those nerves so that we can avoid any similarly sticky situations to that own goal. Yeah, it's everything. Those 3 goals. It's the kind of thing that the UEFA Champions League is missing now that they got rid of the away goals rule.
Yeah,
it makes the ties more exciting. Although generally more exciting when it's the other way around in terms of getting away goals in the second leg, but still, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that second leg, Jimmy, we got the second game coming up next week at home this time. How are you feeling, man? We don't have to go too deep into it, but how are you feeling? Can the Union pull this out with this advantage they have right now?
We gotta feel good at home. Yeah, I mean, you can't feel bad about it. I think I'm trying to think about this. I'm so tired, but I think with the advantage that we have, that a tie of any sort, and we would have to lose by more than a couple goals to not advance. Correct? A tie does not get them through.
Yeah, because if we tied in the second leg, we have the 3 away goals as the tiebreaker. Yeah, so you're right.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel good about that. That being said, I don't think we should use that as a barrier. Go out and go and play to win the game. But it does give you that buffer, like Eric said. I like Union at home. They seem to. When they are at home and can play a little bit more on the front foot, even though they don't depend on that, they seem to be able to put defenders in those really tough positions where they have to make hard plays, and that's when you get those like red cards and PKs that we always see Union get in these, especially in like tournament games at home. They're really good at drawing those double yellows and red cards and PKs and such. So and it's because they put defenders in hard positions. It's not a favoritism thing at all. I promise you, no rep is favoring Philly. It's not a thing. Yeah, you got to feel good about being at home.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So we will see that second leg next Tuesday. I believe it's at 8 o'clock. So it's a little bit of a nicer time here now that we're at home. It won't be a 10 o'clock start. But guys, it's time. We have to move on. MLS is back. We got to talk MLS here for a little bit. So, I mean, Paul, I'm going to go right to you with it. How are you feeling now that MLS is back? And we already saw a game last night, huh? How are you feeling?
I am beyond excited for MLS to be back. Of course, it comes at a time where Manchester United's finally heating up and looking like a good team. So all my faith and happiness isn't involved in them. But that's not what we're talking about here.
We're keeping it on brand, though. I mean, we've all talked about our Premier League teams now, and well, Bayern as well. So we didn't have to get.
I can get to Arsenal at some point if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we have time. We have time, Eric. Don't worry.
But I am so excited for MLS to be back. As we all, Inter Miami played Salt Lake last night. I'll talk a little bit about that game. Miami didn't look. Obviously, they won 2-0, but I don't think they looked as good as people expected them to. I mean, Salt Lake was not at all clinical in any of those chances, and they could have easily tied 2-2 or even won that game 3-2 if they converted some of those chances. So, not to talk trash about Miami, but they didn't look good at all. I didn't think Messi didn't score, Suarez didn't score. As a Union fan, and that's a good thing to enjoy. But MLS is back, like we said. The Union are back on Saturday. I'll let you guys talk about it before I start rambling.
Yeah, I mean, before we get into that, I mean, it's just, it's craziness. The season is starting already. It's going to go from now until November, December playoffs. That's 11 months of the year, which is just a crazy thing to think about. And I think we should sort of start by looking at the conferences. So let's take a look at our favorite here, the East. I know we've all kind of in our group chat have been talking about predictions, and we're trying to put some down. And we all talked about how it's extremely hard to predict the East this year. And I know a lot of other pundits out there have been saying the same sort of things. And obviously we know MLS is a crapshoot anyways, so it doesn't really matter what you write down. You're probably going to be wrong. But Jimmy, I just want to get your thoughts. Who do you think are actually going to be contenders in the Eastern Conference this year?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a few favorites to come back, I think, right? Man, Cincy's probably going to be one of those that's up there. Columbus probably has a shot. They kept a lot of their key pieces, which is hard after winning a championship.
Their entire 11 is back from MLS Cup, which is crazy. Yeah,
it's crazy. And I think one team that's maybe a little bit of a sleeper that I think could be up there is Orlando. They've had some good business in the offseason. Orlando's weird. I distinctly remember a game last year where Orlando fans were like trying to break into the press conference room and get their coach fired, and then they like ended the season with like the third most points or something. It's crazy what I don't know. Orlando's an anomaly to me, but I don't know. To me, those are the three that stand out the most to me. I think everyone else would have to have a really, really good year, punching above their weight to have a chance at the Shield. I know there are some other people that have some different opinions on that. I'll let them speak on that. But yeah, I think those are the three for me that I think are the biggest contenders in the East this year.
Yeah. Eric, do you have any other teams to add to that, or do you think Jimmy's spot on there?
I think he's pretty spot on there. I would maybe add Atlanta, depending on how they gel.
Yeah.
Although I don't think any team from the East is winning the Shield. I think I think it's going to be a Western Conference team because the Western Conference is weaker.
I agree with that.
I think the Eastern Conference teams are going to take too many points off each other for any of them to win the Shield. So I think we're going to see a lower points total for each position compared to last year. I was kind of looking at that based on our predictions that we made and the points totals that we predicted for the Union, and how I think most of us our points total would have had them around 6th-ish for last year. And I think it could be bet closer to 4th or 5th with that point total this season. I think everything's going to get knocked down a couple places because of the tough competition and a lot of the quote unquote weaker teams being able to take points more regularly off the stronger teams.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And then, Paul, I want to get your opinion here on this comment that Colin just brought in. He thinks that the Union, the bar is kind of set at like a 4 or 5 seed. I think that's kind of where our predictions lied. So I was just wondering how you feel on that.
I agree with Colin there. I feel like, obviously, in my opinion, the top 2 seeds in the East are between Columbus and Cincy. Mm-hmm. I actually picked Columbus to win the East in my prediction. I expect them to have a nice, strong rebound after their MLS Cup. But after that, it's a little bit of a question mark. But I do agree 4 or 5 is good. The Union, I'm blanking. I think they were in 4th last year, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And they're basically bringing back the same team, as we all know. The East is getting tougher, so I'd be pretty happy with 4 or 5.
Yeah. I think that's kind of where we all fell. It was either 4 or 5 across the board. I'm looking at our prediction spreadsheet just now. Yep. Yeah, that's where we had them. So I mean, it's kind of crazy to think there's like those 3 or 4 top teams in the East, and then Philly kind of falls into that in between realm where there's a lot of teams fighting for a lot of places.
I just want to point this out really quick. I know Steve put it. Steve's obviously not here, and you actually put it, Tim, too. So maybe you want to just add a little bit, but you guys you both had NYCFC super high, which I did not. I'm not feeling it. I feel like there's too much what ifs in that team, but I mean that is the beauty of them. That is MLS, right? What ifs can become beautiful, amazing things. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I thought that was really interesting that you guys both had NYC as 2nd and 3rd. You and Steve did.
Yeah, I just think the way that they've been building their roster and how far that they fell, City Football Group is not going to like that at all. And I think the people that they're bringing in, along with now they've solidified their goalkeeper. We all know him. It's Matt Freese. Like, he is the starter this year. I think he can be a match winner. I had faith in him with the Union. And then, they play on the smaller field. They have now young attacking players, but they're all worth a whole lot of money. And we know sometimes that doesn't translate, but if it does, then I think they're easily going to be a top 4 team. So I don't know. I'm kind of high on them. I don't know why, but I am. But yeah, speaking of things that we're high on, or maybe not high on, it's actually interesting. I was just looking. We all have the same 4 teams in the bottom, just in different areas. We all think that in some sort of order, DC, Charlotte, Montreal, and Toronto will be the 4 worst teams in the East. So I kind of want to get our takes on that. Jimmy, I'll start with you. Why do you think those 4 teams are trash?
Man, okay, so here's the interesting thing is, like, There's a few teams in there. Like, I think DC will be better this year. I think getting Wayne out, they've got a few decent pieces to build on. I think even Charlotte, if they can get some good DPs in that are committed and can contribute, they could be good. But the issue is there is so many teams that could be really good or really not good in this Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know how they get above where they're at. That is what it is like, I just can't see who they go above. I feel like Chicago's gotten a decent amount better, hopefully, or on paper at least. New England, we all said New England's probably going to drop a little bit, so that probably they're probably not going to drop below DC and Montreal or Charlotte, right? So yeah, I don't know. For me, it was just like I couldn't really find teams that they were going to realistically jump on paper right now. Obviously, that can all change, but that's where my head is at with that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think we all kind of have similar thoughts on that because we have them so low. Let's shift a little bit to some of the middle teams in the East. We haven't really talked a lot about New England, Red Bull, Chicago. Who else am I missing here? Nashville. So, Paul, like out of those four teams there, Red Bull, Nashville, New England, and Chicago, like, what are your feeling on those teams? Because I know we have them all kind of like just on the edge of making the playoffs to making the playoffs here in the East.
As a Union supporter, I might be crucified saying this, but I think the business that Red Bull did this past off season was good business. They brought in Forsberg from Leipzig. I personally feel that he's going to light the league up. I mean, I saw some of the way he's been playing in preseason. It's just you bring a player with talent like that. Not saying that MLS is a bag league at all, but he was going up. He was balling against the likes of Bayern and Dortmund and all. And you bring that over, it's going to translate well for a team like Rebels. And I think him in the center of that team, it's just going to add his talent. It's just going to spread around, and he's going to be a huge playmaker for Red Bull. So I know, actually, I'm looking at my predictions now. I had New England above Red Bull. I'm actually curious. I might be contemplating switching that now that I'm thinking of it. But I also do I like the business that Chicago did as well. I don't think it's going to be as good as Columbus. Obviously, having them go from the summer Columbus, they ended up winning the tournament or the entire league. But I do think this new business is going to take a little for Chicago to gel together. But once they gel together, I think you're going to see them become a bigger threat than they were last year.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And then the only other team in there that we didn't really talk about, there's two actually. We didn't talk about Nashville. We know what Nashville are. They sit back and defend, and they hope Hani Mukhtar can be the MVP and get them to the playoffs and win games.
They're playing right now, and in Champions Cup, and I believe it's 2-0 last time I checked. And Hani scored.
Okay,
surprise.
Yeah,
but Sam Surridge off the spot, first or off the. I don't know if it was a PK, but he's off the mark. And I feel like that's good for them, right? Like that was kind of that was supposed to change it all last year and give them a push for playoffs, and it didn't work out. So hopefully, well, not hopefully. I don't want to say hopefully because it doesn't work out, but from a Philly perspective, but yeah, I mean it's dreadful watching them if Hani's not scoring, no one else is. So might be a little bit more entertaining to watch at least.
Yeah, no, it's true. And then the only other team, which is really funny, that we did not mention in the East is a team that we all have finishing in 5th place, which is Inter Miami. That just goes to show that we do not work for MLS. I think that's all we have to talk about there for Miami. There's no one else to talk about. So we're going to go to the Western Conference now. All right. Eric, I want to get your thoughts about the top of the West. I think it's pretty clear there's two real contenders in the West, but I'll let you give your thoughts on it. What do you think of the top two in the West there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all had Seattle and LAFC as the top two in the West, and
I threw a curveball in there and I said Houston, but I don't feel confident in that at all.
Yeah, I remember seeing that now, and I questioned it at the time. But yeah, I think the supporter shield is Seattle's to lose.
Okay.
Interesting.
Part of that depends on whether LAFC end up bringing Carlos Vela back. Because that is still a question mark. I just saw something today about how he hasn't cleaned out his locker yet. So
is that true?
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's what's his name? The center back, the U.S. national team center back who plays for them now, who everyone hates.
The ex Red Bull guy?
Aaron Long. Thank you.
Yeah.
Aaron Long's the one who said that. He said that to the press. Was like, his stuff's still in the locker, so they're clearly still negotiating.
So he's like the ex that won't leave, is what he said.
Yeah, just hopping from one team we don't like to another team we don't like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there are still some question marks around LAFC. Playing into my brand a little bit, they did make a deal recently with Bayern, which I'm still upset about. But so we'll see. I don't think that'll have any effect on the season yet, but obviously, given still relatively recent events, I hope to see LAFC suffer in all possible ways. But I think they'll be pretty free and clear at the top, like at number 2, along with Seattle. I think those two will be far and away the class of the Western Conference, but I think Seattle will be the ones to top it. They've got a well-rounded team. They've got a good mixture of bringing people back with some new blood, getting some refreshes in there with Ladero going to Orlando, getting a bit younger, but not really losing a tie. It's hard to say not really losing a ton of quality when you lose someone like Ladero, but like they've done a good job of turning things over in a way that I think maybe some Union fans kind of wish the Union had done a little bit more of this off season. And like I said, I think they're gonna win the Supporters' Shield.
Fair enough. I mean, I know we've talked about it. We think the West is going to be a little bit less competitive than the East this year, and I think that's why you're picking Seattle to win the Shield there, because they won't have as tough as opposition as many teams in the East will. So Jimmy, I want to throw this to you. This is something I just thought off in the head, so putting you on the spot. Which team out West do you think is going to make the biggest jump up, and which do you think will make the biggest drop down the standings this year?
Oof. Well, I mean, I think the easy answer is probably Colorado, right? Like we all know the they've done. I'm not quite sure it's good enough to get them to a playoff spot yet. Very well could be. Maybe Galaxy's maybe a good shout. I can't quite remember where they ended up in the standings last year. I thought it was pretty low, but I don't remember how low it was. So
they finished second to last year, but they were still 9 points above Colorado. So
right. Okay. So I feel like those two are probably the easy answers as to maybe especially Galaxy too. They have tried hard to make it seem like they are competent this offseason. So we'll see how it works out. As far as dropping, Dallas maybe. I'm also realizing that right now I have Dallas twice in my pick. I have them as 3rd and 6th, so I think they probably meant 6th and not 3rd. I think they're going to see. They didn't. I think they may have ended up there last year, but I don't know if they're going to get much better this year. I don't remember how much business they've done, if they've done anything significant, and I feel like they're just kind of relying on the same things. I think Velasco's hurt for the first part of the year. So they do have some missing pieces. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how far they could fall. And Houston, they're hurt. They have so many injuries right now. Herrera's out. Ferreira just went down in the first Champions League.
That really kills my Houston second place pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably that is the one. I have them all the way down at 11th right now. So
yeah.
I don't know. I hope I like watching Houston last year, so I hope not to see that. But
yeah. I think one of the Dallases that you meant to put on there was probably for St. Louis, because there's no St. Louis on yours. So there you go.
Okay.
For me, I think St. Louis is probably the team that's going to drop the most, because they were an expansion team and they got first place last year. So I don't know. That's just my take on it. But guys, we know the West, like I said, it's not the best, but there's all these teams out there that we just really don't see that much since we cover the Union. Paul, I'll throw this to you. We know that the Union are going to play some Western Conference teams here, especially in the early part of the season. What's a Western Conference team that you're looking forward to actually seeing this year, since they'll play the Union?
I'm actually going to go with one who the Union are going to play fairly early, and I'm going to go Seattle.
Okay.
Watching MLS throughout the years, Seattle has always been one of those teams that you expected to win. You expected to be on the top. And I actually looked at the Union Seattle, I believe it was Union Seattle history earlier. And if I looked correctly, I don't think we have played them since like 2019 or something. So I think that's going to be cool, especially seeing them coming over to Subaru Park. That is a game I'm really excited for.
Nice. For me, it's the Portland game. I know they go to Portland this year, so that's always a fun one. I think I mentioned that in the last podcast too. I don't know. I have a soft spot for Portland. I feel like if I had to choose a Western Conference team to support, it would be Portland. That's just my take there. But yeah, I don't know. Do we have any final MLS is back thoughts that we want to share? Eric, I'll kind of throw it to you first. What are you excited for here?
I'm excited, just outside of the Union. I'm excited to see how a lot of these teams that I think you talked about it a little bit in regards to NYCFC, but I think this applies to a lot of teams and is part of why it's so hard to predict everything this year. A lot of teams have put together potentially really good cores that for one reason or another, maybe they're just young, maybe they just have completely revamped their roster, so we don't know what they look like together. But for any one of these reasons, could potentially all gel and have everything peak and be really amazing, or could have everything crash and burn. And it's going to be interesting to see because there's so many of them, which teams gel, which teams don't, which are like close, but maybe next year will be really good. There's a lot of unpredictability because of that I think it's going to be fun to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, 100%. Jimmy, any final thoughts on MLS being back?
No, I hope that for Kevincho's sake, our friend over that is a Sporting Kansas City fan, I hope for his sake that Sporting Kansas City starts the year a little bit better. But man, his content is so good when they're not playing well. So I'm kind of hoping that it's back and forth so we could see that. That's my only other thought on the West right now. Yeah.
Nice. Paul, final thoughts. MLS is back. We're here.
It's exciting, and I'm also excited to see all these new core. Obviously, I don't want to see these teams play well, but because I'm a Union fan, but it's going to be exciting to see how all these teams that basically revamp their entire roster play and then gel together and all. And then, that's basically it. I'm just excited to have soccer back here in the States.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a really good point because, I mean, when we follow the Union, we cover the Union, we see them usually bring back their same roster, and that's pretty much what happened. We haven't seen a good roster overhaul in a while. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if some of these teams can put it together. And speaking of one of those teams that did reorganize their entire roster, pretty much, Chicago Fire. The Union take on Chicago Fire this coming Saturday at Subaru Park. Home opener, 7:30 at night. It's going to be cold. I know a lot of people are kind of dreading that weather there, but hey, it's going to be a fun time. So let's kind of get into it. Let's preview this match. Jimmy, I'll throw it to you first here. Our first MLS match of the season. How do you think the Union's going to come out? How are they going to line up dealing with their, in between CCC ties with Saprissa?
Oh man, yeah, it's interesting. Jim's gonna have his press conference tomorrow, so I'm sure we'll have a little bit more info to go off of after that. But from what it sounds like Jack Elliott did train on the side again today.
Okay.
So it sounds like he's not going to. I'd be surprised if they pushed him for Saturday, at least in a starting role. So I think that leaves you probably with a similar back line to what we saw on Tuesday night. Maybe Mbaizo comes in. We now know that Kai Wagner is able to play on Saturday. So yeah, I don't know. You could throw that 3 back in there with Harriel, but I think that's a lot, taking a lot of minutes out of your defense with Tuesday in mind. So I think you probably limit that and stick with one of those guys for as long as you can, and split the minutes. But I think that midfield is probably the question for me. There's going to be some rotation up top. I think maybe not as starters, but going to get guys in relatively early. Yeah. But I think in midfield there could be some rotation. Maybe Bueno gets in there on the right side. I don't know if Quinn did enough on the right side or didn't do enough to lose that spot yet. So I think that to me is still the question mark, is particularly that right side of the diamond. I don't think anyone has really claimed that yet. Obviously, there's only been one game, but I think that's the question mark for me right now.
Yeah, something I just thought of the top of my head, and I'll throw this to Eric because I'm interested to hear your take on it. One person we didn't talk a lot about when we were reviewing the Saprissa match was Mikel Ua and his game. I'm wondering, because there's so many games here and the fixture congestion and all that, I wonder if Jim goes with Sullivan up top in place of Ua. Would you be surprised if we saw that kind of change here for this home opener for MLS?
Yes and no. I was just thinking as Jimmy was talking about the lineup, I feel like every time I expect there to be rotation, there ends up not being rotation. So thinking about it from a rotational standpoint, I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that change. But then I'm also kind of like, anytime there's change, I'm a little surprised. And also with Ua having come off a little earlier in the game on Tuesday, I think that kind of adds into my expectation that he'll start again on Saturday because he got a little bit more of a rest. But then again, he didn't have as full of a preseason, and it seems like over the past season and a half, there's been some reluctance to play him for too much time. So looking at it from that standpoint, I think part of me leans towards us maybe being more likely to see one of the other strikers starting in his place rather than moving Quinn up. But Quinn also did pretty well when he got moved up in the second half on Tuesday. So I'm like, I go back and forth. At this point, nothing would surprise me, I guess.
Hey, that's fair enough. And honestly, yes, we know the Union don't really like to, or Jim Curtin at least doesn't really rotate as much. We've seen that kind of bite the Union in the ass at the end of the season sometimes. But something that we also didn't mention, and I think is worth mentioning as we start to preview this match, and I'll throw this to Paul, we saw Jim Curtin use all 5 subs in the game against Saprissa, and 2 of them were made even before the Union had the lead. So it wasn't like, they went up 2-1 and they just threw subs on because they're trying to rest people. These were kind of strategic subs. So I kind of just want to get your take on that, Paul. I know we're still talking about lineups and formations and who we think we'll see on Saturday, but do you think that Jim's kind of maybe changing his ways a little bit, at least with substitutions this year, if he doesn't do it with total, overhaul for different games?
To be honest, I sure hope so. There's so many times in the games where I'm like, is a sub coming? This is the perfect time to make a sub. Like, can we please make a sub? This guy would fit perfect here. So it was really good to see Jim use those tactical, I guess you call it tactical subs, to try to change the input of the game. And honestly, I think that might have something to do with the better depth in the team. With the bench wise, I know they're putting a lot of trust in the young kids that are coming up, and a lot of these young signings. But when they've came in, they performed. So it's exciting to say the least that the subs he's starting to use them all, and I do think that throughout the season, I think it will continue. Especially with the selection nightmare that the midfield is going to cause with how many talented players you might see. Some players start and then maybe like 55th, 60th minute, another one comes in to try to change the game up a little. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I keep going back and forth on it, but I think the safe bet is probably seeing something similar to the same 11 rolled out there. Obviously we know it's going to be Andre Blake. It'll be that back line, maybe the rotation of Bizo, like Jimmy said. The midfield, you're not going to not play El Brujo Martinez. You're going to play Jack McGlynn, and then it's just that right side. Will we see Sullivan? Will we see Bueno? Will we see Bedoya? We're not sure. And then the front three is probably going to be Gazdag, Ua, and Carranza, unless Jim wants to get a little tricky with it and start someone else in that place. Maybe moving Quinn Sullivan up, maybe moving Chris Donovan in. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, Taparebo, we didn't even see him.
Who?
Exactly. We didn't see him in the Champions League game. Or wow, I said Champions League. It's not Champions League anymore. How many times am I going to make that mistake? It's going to be forever. But we're talking now about the MLS game against Chicago, and as we kind of mentioned in talking about our MLS preview, Chicago has had a big overhaul on their roster. So I just kind of want to throw it over to you guys. Like, do you think they're going to be any way put together for this? We know that they got some, big name striker from Ghent to come in, but is he going to be a proven guy? They got MLS guys like Kellen Acosta. They went out and got Jace Gasper. We don't even know if he's going to start. They even got, is he injured?
Sorry, Andrew Gutman. They also got.
Oh yeah, they did get Andrew Gutman. That's right.
Barlow as well.
Barlow, yeah. So they went out. They went in MLS. They went outside MLS. It's a totally new team here in Chicago. Let's see. I'll throw it over to Eric first this time. Like, do you even have a sense of what we're going to see from this team?
This feels like the 500th time in the past 5 years that we've talked about Chicago having a whole new team, going back to when they hired former Union player Veljko Paunovic to be their manager, and brought in Bastian Schweinsteiger for that infamous question about winning the World Cup from that one reporter.
I'm pretty sure he did it because the U.S. got the World Cup. So
that's true. That's true, man. Yeah, I was sad about seeing Schweinsteiger go to. Fun fact: I was actually in the Allianz Arena for the player introduction at the beginning of the season when they announced that they had sold Schweinsteiger to Manchester United.
Oof.
That was. My ears are still ringing from the boos and whistles.
Look at Paul smirking up there. Look at him.
Yeah. Well, how did your Champions League campaign go this year? Who won that group? Anyway, back to Chicago.
Yeah.
It's. I'll believe it when I see it in terms of them gelling and putting it all together, because like I said, we keep having these rebuilds of Chicago that just don't quite work out for one reason or another, even though they've had good quality players. So I don't think they'll have, and I think we talked about this a little bit last week, and I think we're kind of all in agreement that none of us think they'll have it put together for this game.
Yeah.
Time will tell, and in a tough Eastern Conference, it's not going to really give them time to gel. They could end up in a hole by the time they've really started to put it together, and then from there, it's hard to dig yourself out of. We saw Miami try to do it last year. Even with Messi, they couldn't really do it. So it kind of depends how long it takes them, if at all.
Yeah. That's very true. I mean, so the one big name player, I mean, if we could say big name, it was a big transfer. They got Hugo Kuipers as their striker from Ghent. I'm assuming he's going to lead the line. I haven't really seen a whole lot if he's really fit and anything like that. But Chicago brought him in because they haven't had a striker in however many years, and they've been just rotating through MLS guys. I think he might be the player to watch here for this game if Chicago's going to have anything. I'm assuming they brought him in to score goals, so hey, he's probably going to have to be that guy. But Paul, I'll throw it over to you. We saw last year when the Union opened their season, they were playing against a Columbus team that was not very similar to this Chicago team in some of these aspects, but they definitely weren't put together. So my question to you is do you think we might be seeing the same kind of result here of the Union kind of getting a big win against a team that might be very good coming year?
I do think so. I'll give two reasons to say so. Number one, I don't really think the Chicago team is fully gelled yet. As we all know, they brought in a bunch of players, and it takes a little while for a team to gel chemistry-wise. Errors on passes, silly passes, shots, taking shots when you want to, all that stuff. And then number two, the way the Union looked in the second half, to go back to the Saprissa game, the way they looked in the second half, it was really encouraging for me. And I think the two will just translate together. And I think if the Union play how they did in the second half with the errors against Chicago, if Chicago does make errors like I'm predicting them to do, it could be a 3-1 type of home opener. Subaru Park gets lit home opener on Saturday.
I love it. And I hope it happens. And you're totally right. Subaru Park, when it's full, when people come out, it's a special place. I know it holds a special place in the hearts of us all here. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that's it. Like, do we want to do score predictions? Like, do we want to be that bold? I think, Paul, you just gave one at 3-1. But Jimmy, do you want to throw a score prediction out there? Or do you want to talk more about maybe how the game you think will play out? Like, how are you feeling?
Yeah. I actually would like to talk about Chicago a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, go for it.
Much, but just looking at Hugo Kuipers here from I believe it was Ghent he came from, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the dude scored 20 goals in the league last year, so he can score.
Yeah.
He looks big. He looks physical. I do know that every time I play against him on FIFA, he scores multiple goals. So I don't know. There's something to be said there, I think. So, but in all seriousness, I fear that this could be a game that it's not so much whether Chicago's put together, but it's whether our Union put together yet. Is it going to come down to Shaqiri free kick goal or a crazy bounce in the box that gets put home by this new guy, or is Kellen Acosta banging a free kick off our wall to kick off the first goal in MLS Cup? You never know what's going to happen. So I don't know. That's kind of my worry. Is it obviously there's some question marks around Chicago, but I'm hoping Union are up for the task. I feel like after the second half on Tuesday, they likely will be. But we've seen them kind of think about things too much and get worried about Tuesday night before Saturday. So as long as they're focused on Saturday, stick to their game plan and play their game, I think they should have this one in the bag. I don't really want to give a score prediction because I feel like I always get it so wrong when I do. But I think Union will score multiple goals in this game. I feel confident in that one.
Okay. Eric, do you want to be bold and give a prediction?
I'm torn. Yeah. I'm gonna say I'll go bold. I'll say 4-1.
Oh,
repeat of the Columbus
last year
score line against Columbus last year. I think if we can put 3 past Saprissa away, I think we can put 4 past Chicago.
Who plays the Joaquin Torres role then, coming off the bench and doing 2 spin moves to give a perfect assist to Carranza? That's I'm just kidding. You can pick someone if you want. I mean,
Raffanello.
Raffanello. Hey, I'm
here the same thing, Eric.
I'm here for it. I am here for it. I love it. Oh, look at that. Getting some love from the Free Kick pod about my jersey wall. I'll have to take a picture or like video of this room because there's even like more other stuff over here that you guys can't see, which is a lot of fun. So maybe I'll do that another time. But hey, thanks for the love there, Todd. Love you, man. That's good. All right. So
do we want to address Evan's question too on Baraboo?
Oh yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, why not? We were talking a little bit about it before. Thoughts on Ty Baribo and as if he's fit or where he is in the pecking order. I mean, we saw that he didn't play against Saprissa. Like, where is he? That kind of thing. And that's what you said, Eric. So for me, I feel like he's just out of favor. And I just think, we're going to start Ua and Carranza, and then Jim Curtin loves those strikers that just grind. So that's why Chris Donovan keeps getting picked. That's why Quinn Sullivan keeps getting moved up into the striker position. And I don't know. We haven't seen enough of Ty Baribo to know if he's like got that dog in him. Like, that's my feeling. But I mean, we spent money on him. I'd love to see him play and see if he can nab a goal. Paul, how are you feeling on it?
Yeah, honestly, I remembered he didn't get picked on Tuesday night, but I really didn't think about it like regarding like the depth of the team. And now that I think about it more, Marcus Anderson came on ahead of him for some minutes, which I know Curtin was praising Anderson for his preseason play, but I still think it's a very interesting situation regarding Baribo. I'd have to agree he's just out of favor. Curtin would rather play the younger guys who like just press their butts off, I guess the way you could say it that way, like Donovan does. But yeah, I guess that's really all. I think you guys nailed it all.
Yeah, Jimmy, any thoughts on it too, or same kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys said it all. I think the only thing I really have to add that's different is that Jim has. We saw it with Pereira last year, right? Like Jim had this. I don't want to call it a trust issue, but he has qualities that he likes in players, and if you're not quite achieving that, it's hard for him to pick you over guys that are achieving that and are possessing those qualities, which is what a coach should do, I think, to a certain extent. The issue is maybe it happens to a fault at times, and I think maybe Baribo deserves to get some minutes and to show if he can get hot and score some goals. But he also just hasn't had that opportunity to. So I don't know. Yeah, Paul, it is a really interesting situation to see Marcus Anderson get the nod, come in off the bench over him. I think, like you said, it probably is maybe just a little bit of a praise thing. He did well in preseason. Get off the bench and just get him running for the team once. But it's going to be I think that's probably one of the bigger positions to watch this year. And to add to that, I wanted to note, because Eric brought this up about Ua coming off. Now, my investigative, I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but I had remembered that in the past, Michael Ua does not play 90 minutes. Like, he doesn't. Looked it up on Transfer Market, and all I did was do a Control F for 90, and so it may not be the most accurate results, but I believe in I'm only finding 9 games out of all 80 games that he's played for Union that come up as full 90-minute games, which is a concern for me. He's our record signing, and that's a concern for me. And we talked about this before the first show. We didn't bring it up, but I'm really interested to see what Union do with his option on his contract after this season. I think a lot of people right now would say that they may not hit that option. But that's my only other note. Or I have one other note. Todd from the Free Kick, I think he was really high on Bedoya starting in Champions League, which I thought was a really good shout. I think if there was any game for him to start, it was on the road, tough environment. He's an experienced guy. But I really liked Bedoya coming off the bench. I think that when defenders are tired, he doesn't have that speed or the finesse, or the technical ability, but he has the smarts and the ability to kind of pick things apart and see things before they're happening. That I think is really good to throw at a tired defender. So that's all I got on that one.
With that, I remember when his contract was officially announced again here. He was saying before that he needs to get on that El Seno workout. So there it is right here. There's Todd coming in clutch. He could be this team's El Seno.
Good time.
They've been missing for a couple of years off the bench. I'm all here for an Alejandro Bedoya El Seno role. I mean, he's not really going to be a winger, but he could be. I mean, you never know.
In Leagues Cup, when he was just coming back from injury last year, he scored 2 goals off 2 bench appearances in Leagues Cup here. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's almost matches the production he had starting from the year prior. So,
hey, we'll take any version of Alejandro Bedoya that we can get. I think at this point, he's still the captain. He's still a club legend. He's going to be that next person on the Union's Ring of Honor whenever he does decide to stop playing here. So. Well, guys, I think we've done another podcast here where we've gone through it. We're ready for this weekend. But before we head out of here, we got to do our On the Volley takes. We're here, DOOP on the Volley. We always like to give a good take on things. So this week's take is, what's one crazy thing that you will think will happen in MLS this year? It can be anything crazy. I'll start it off. For me, and it has to do with my predictions, and this is why I kind of put them in there. This is why I have NYCFC finishing second in the East. I have Houston finishing second in the West. Those things are crazy. They should not happen, but it's MLS. So in 10 months' time, when it's the playoffs, and I'm right, I'll come on this podcast and we'll do an hour of how I was right, and everyone else can just listen to me talk for that long. So there we go. I'll throw it over to Paul. What do you think? What's one thing that's craziness is going to happen in MLS this year?
So I honestly had a hard time coming up with this because there's so much that could happen in MLS. But I'm gonna do an over/under on managers being fired.
Yes.
Ooh,
I would not be surprised to see another 8 to 9, maybe 10 managers fired by the end of the year.
Who do you think's the first one to go?
Oh, I didn't prepare this much.
Okay, I'll bring up one. One I'm really interested in. I'm so devastated. I love him. I love his personality on and off the sideline. It seems like Vanni Sartini might be on not thin ice, but I think the expectations are starting to change a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I think, he might be one that I worry about just a little bit.
Todd's weighing in. He says Nick Cushing from NYC. Yeah. There goes my second place right there, Todd. Thank you for that.
I actually have my I'm going to go Josh Wolf of Austin.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Yep.
Did you see today, this is again kind of off topic, but he said he doesn't put much thought into what the pundits say of him. But then 2 years ago, he was the one holding up the sign of what the pundits said and how they did better.
Right.
Yeah, peak MLS right there. Peak MLS. All right, Eric, I'm sorry, Paul, go for it.
I'm going to go one bold manager. I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, I'm going to remember this point right here. I'm going to go newly hired John Herdman of Toronto. I don't see that appointment working out at all, personally.
Okay.
I think he's a coach that you see. He's a national team coach, but I don't think he's going to work out in the club game.
So we'll just get Insigne and Bernadeschi as club managers and players, and they'll be vaping in the locker room, and everything will be fine, and it's all good.
Exactly.
But so Eric, I'll throw the on the volley take to you. What's the one crazy thing you think will happen in MLS this year?
I'm still having trouble thinking of them. I think we could see a major signing come in from Europe to one of the teams that's not in New York or LA.
Oh,
I like that.
Or Miami, because they can't fit anyone else.
Someone named Giroud by any chance? Is that where we're going with this?
That could I think he could be one. But something on that level.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's say assigning on that level, going to a team that's not necessarily one of the big traditional teams that tend to buy one of those players.
Yeah. All right. I'm all for it. Let's see it happen. That would be peak MLS, by the way. So I would love it. All right, Jimmy. What's your on the volley take here?
We didn't even bring this up, so I'm surprised no one said anything about the episode. This is general MLS talk. My prediction is that the replacement refs are so good they run out of the league. That is my prediction. That the replacement refs will show how bad MLS refs are, and they will permanently make the switch to bring in all new refs. I actually don't think that's going to happen, but you guys all took the things I was going to say. So I want to bring up the ref thing somehow, and I couldn't figure out another way to bring it up. So that is what I mean. I honestly think it's going to be. I think it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. But I don't think they looked awful last night. There were some moments. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I didn't see anything too crazy. For me, it was the same thing that I saw all of last year when Messi came in. Anytime he touched the ball and fell over, it was a call.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, he's going to get that. He's Messi, but that was my only thing. I thought the rest of the game was pretty MLS. It was pretty solid. Yeah.
I thought one call where Arango was waiting for a ball over the top and a defender kind of ran into him and he was behind all the other defenders. And I thought that was there. Some people have thought that was a missed ball, but other than that, I don't think it was any worse than it has been any other time. So yeah, not a real big, crazy on the volley take for me this week. Sorry guys.
Hey, that's fine. We'll have one every week. So hey, maybe next week will be more crazy. That is totally fine. Well, guys, that's going to do it for another episode of Doop Doop on the Volley. Geez, I'm calling it the old name now. What's going on? But anyways, you can find us anywhere that we stream podcasts. If you're listening to this on the audio version, Apple, Spotify, Google, all those fun places. Don't miss our written coverage on Philly Sports Network. Also, we cover the Union, but we also cover all sorts of soccer on there as well. Right now, we're doing other features on the CONCACAF Women's Gold Cup. Which has been really fun to watch. We saw, U.S. get a big win in their first game. It was a 5-0 win. They play again tomorrow night, the good U.S. WNT. So, hey, follow us along for our Union takes, our MLS takes, our soccer takes in general. We'll have more coverage on European season as well. So, yeah, just give us a good follow. It's a good time. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy, and we will see you next time. Peace out.